We're going. Oh, okay, sorry. Welcome, I am Dr. Freebro, and today we're going to be looking at the short story, The Siphoners. Today we're going to be focusing on the four main characters of this short story. First off, we have the grandmother of Haji. She's kind of a relevant character, and we also have Haji himself. He's not as relevant. We have Avril and Bruno. Avril's more of the main character on this part, and then quite a bit when we have society as a whole. It's not really a character, but the characters in it. In this story, Haji's grandmother is a very dynamic character. However, she's not talked about much in the story, but she can still be analyzed to quite a certain degree. Even though she is religious, which most people would see her as a static character because of that, since people who are religious tend to follow a set lives based on their beliefs, and they don't exactly change, they just go day to day following that. It's very rare, I'd say, for people to actually change. In this case, because of her religion, she is against the idea of what Haji is trying to do, which is to hide her away from society. She fears out for what the Emperor will do to him if his government system found out that she is living out in a forest isolated from society. She's later convinced by Haji that is the best option for both of them. As a result, it shows that she has changed. She was slightly stubborn at first, and later she opens up. Her life experience and her wisdom gave Haji the solution to coming home safely from his scripted trip. The next character, which is somewhat relevant, Haji. In the story, as I mentioned before, he's a young woodcutter named Haji, of course. He's present in both the beginning and the end of this story. Growing up, he lost his parents, sadly, partway through his childhood, and was taken by his grandparents. Because of this, he most likely suffered from what is called Harlow's theory of motherless monkeys. He did not grow up with the affection of his real parents, and it was substituted by maybe not fake love, but not as real love from his grandparents. In most cases like these, the grandparents aren't as connected to the child as they should be, because they are not theirs. So it is possible that the family gap caused him to grow up differently, which in this case would be going against the social norm of thinking that the elder should be killed off at a certain age. Being raised by people who are growing closer and closer to the age gap would cause different views on his life. Since they're talking about it, he most likely thought about it, and since they're closer to the age gap, it's most likely negative talk, influencing his mind to think this way as well, leading him to his idea. Because of how he was raised, he decided to try and prolong the lives of his grandparents and break from social norms, making him a dynamic character. In the beginning, he was working hard to secretly hide away his grandparents so he isn't left alone, which he succeeds in. But in the end, he has changed. He has accepted his fate, and whatever fate is coming towards him, since he is calm about the situation. He has changed from just wanting his grandmother to avoid this fate to making society as a whole realize that if they want to evolve past this point, they would need the wisdom of these people that they're killing off, and without them, they are just damaging society more and more. His peace of mind has changed for the better or for the worse in the society he lives in. Also, at the end of the story, he confronts the Emperor one last time. Haji broke the law, but he has the courage to stand up to him and tell him to his face that he broke his law of keeping a person alive above the age of 60. He does not care for the penalty or the consequences he will face, thus proving his will. Next, we have Avril and Bruno. As mentioned before, Bruno isn't as relevant as Avril, but she definitely is relevant. Avril is introduced right after the first half of Haji's tale is told. Avril is married to her husband Bruno, who has, unfortunately, an Alzheimer's disease, which is brought on by old age, which contradicts their point, but we'll get to that later. Avril is an old character, but she is a strong character. Not physically, but they were both professors working together at a university before they became too old. Avril isn't physically strong, as said before. She is strong in the sense of standing up for what is right. When the raiders came to siphon their oil, Avril tries to fend them off by fighting for what is rightfully theirs, the oil. The raiders do not care what they have to say because they are following the government's orders. Bruno, on the other hand, has no idea what is going on. He thinks the raiders are IT technicians coming from the university to fix, I think it's their internet that was broken. He gets shot at, and he doesn't even flinch. I don't think he even notices. He's mainly just focused on that. Avril, on the other hand, is going against the way society has turned out. She does not find it fair for the government to just take away their citizens' livestock. During the encounter, the head raider hands Avril some mercy beans, which are essentially suicide pills for the people that reach 60. They're possibly cyanide pills, but it's not exactly stated. Avril gets angry at the idea of suicide, but later thinks more about it. After the raiders leave, she returns to her spot at the magnum opus she was reading and leaves the thought for tomorrow. Now, essentially, the main character which causes all the conflict in the story, not exactly a character, but society as a whole. Considering the amount of people in it, it's multiple characters. And this is the main problem in the story. It just isn't one character, it's society as a whole, caused by essentially the king. This can be broken down into quite a few different things. The way society has seemed to be built up is upon helplessness. When the law first came to be, there was without a doubt people against this law. Since judging a person's worth based on their age is morally wrong. As people have no choice and the emperor has all the power, they can't really retaliate. They have to accept the fate that they are given at some point. In psychology, the society would be classified as based upon the helplessness theory, where essentially a person is put in a situation and conditioned to accept the fate that they cannot escape from that state, even though there are definitely ways. They just can't realize it, they've given up hope. People in the past have most likely tried and failed to escape this fate, and because of this, the people of the current society just haven't tried. If they failed, how can they possibly get anywhere? The help of the elders that they are unreasonably killing, their knowledge and wisdom can help them, but they don't see this. They just see them as essentially parasites. They don't see them as something useful, just something that leeches off of them, since they can't work in society and when they're at the age where they essentially become useless. Since they are young, they think they're better than everyone else, and since they're at a middle age, they're both young and old, making them the prime age. This could be seen as a narcissistic personality, which is essentially where someone loves themselves to the point of it controls their lives. They don't exactly care how others feel, they just do what makes them feel good about themselves. This is essentially shown by the group stealing from the others. They're just trying to provide for themselves, they don't care how this will affect the others. They're justifying their actions because they are younger, and essentially saying they contribute more to society. They're rationalizing their actions, which isn't really needed. They would think for themselves even for a second. They realize that the state of society they are living in, and maybe, just maybe, attempt to use the old people to change. Hopefully this provided enough insight for you.